Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Duffy Aquatics. In this video, I'll be going over how to set up a dirted aquarium. If this is the first time you've ever set up a dirted aquarium, hopefully I'll cover everything that you need to know and a lot of the problems that you will encounter for your first aquarium, mainly with the water turning green or cloudy. They are usually very simple fixes, but for your first one, they may seem like a huge problem. The soil that I'm going to be using for this video is just the cheapest potting mix that I could buy from my local supplier, which in Australia is Bunnings. I use that because I know it's going to have no fertilizers, worm castings, or anything that may cause adverse reactions in the aquarium. Even though most potting mixes would be fine to use, I always go with the cheapest one. One, for the cost, and two, because I know usually it's a no frills added one. It might be a bit chunkier with bark and stuff like that in there, but I don't actually ever find that that is much of a problem. If it is an issue for you, you can get a grate or something with some holes in it just to sift out the larger particles of bark that are in the soil. But I just leave it in the aquarium because I know it's going to eventually break down and just become nutrients for the plants to use. So all I do is literally get the bag, lay it on the floor, cut it open, get a Chinese takeaway container and scoop out the potting mix with that and just try to evenly cover the bottom of the aquarium. If you're not going to have plants all the way around your aquarium, you don't actually need to have the potting mix everywhere. Just put it where you know you're going to have the plants. I use the rice method cookie for measuring it, so 1 finger knuckle depth for the potting mix is perfect, as you can see there, and then I cap it off with sand or fine pebbles. I find sand is usually a bit better because it will stop like the tannins and stuff leaching out into the water column, but using pebbles is absolutely fine too, and I'll show you the results for both of them once I finish. So when I'm capping off my soil with the fine pebbles here, I'm doing a thicker cap than what the soil is, about twice the thickness. So if I use my finger in the rice cooker method again, which I'll show you shortly, it is 2 finger knuckles for the capping. So when I stick my finger there, it should be an entire finger length of actual substrate, with 1 knuckle being the soil and 2 knuckles high being the capping substrate. You can go thicker, you can go a little bit shallower with the capping substrate. I find thicker is usually better for dirted aquariums, especially if you intend on possibly moving any of the plants around in the aquarium, because they will grow through and grip the soil. So having that thicker capping substrate will prevent you from getting a lot of debris mixed up into your aquarium. So that's one thing a lot of people encounters when they're going to do maintenance for their aquarium that has like a dirted substrate. If they've done it too thin, it just becomes a nightmare when they're moving stuff around, or even if they're using a siphon to do like a light gravel vac and get the debris or detritus out of the aquarium. So thicker is usually better. I set all my dirted aquariums up as no water change system, so I don't personally run into those issues, but because I sell a lot of plants, I do have the issue of having my hands in the tanks and moving the plants around a lot. So that's why I do recommend a thicker substrate. It just makes things so much easier. Yeah, you'll lose a little bit of tank space, but if you are wanting best results, that's just what I recommend. So when I'm filling up the aquarium, because it is easy to displace your capping substrate and kind of mix it up if you just shove a hose or a watering can into your aquarium, I just get a plastic trainer bonsai pot because I know it's got a lot of fine holes, and then I just pour the water through that and it will gently fill up the aquarium. And being the cheaper plastic trainer pot, I know it will float when I'm getting to a higher water level, and it just makes it that much easier to top up the aquarium. One thing you will notice as I'm filling up the aquarium is that the water in the aquarium actually remains very clear because I'm not disturbing or agitating too much of the substrate in the aquarium. That will stay like that for quite a while if you set everything up perfectly. If you are really onto it and you follow my advice, you won't ever actually have to worry about the water going cloudy or turning green. It's just a matter of making sure you've got a heavy planting in your aquarium, as well as one extra bit of advice: if you're using the right type of filtration to stop things from getting out of hand first, you'll have a really easy time of doing this. One thing that you want to consider too when you're setting up your dirted aquarium is what light you're going to use. I just use the cheapest full spectrum light money can buy off eBay, and it hasn't steered me wrong yet. One of the big advantages of using potting mix or dirt in the aquarium for your planted tank is you can get away with not actually needing stuff like CO2 or really expensive lights, just a full spectrum LED, and you should be able to grow most of the plants. So I'm going to set this tank up as a red plant aquarium so I can demonstrate how good a dirted tank is for growing your red plants without CO2 and without like amazing lights in your aquarium. So I'm just on finished topping up the aquarium now, and then I'll show you how clear the water is, and then I'll show you what can happen if you don't have any filtration. So I'm intending to have these tanks set up for shrimp or small fish, and I don't want to have any aquarium filters running in there. So as you can see now, after filling it up, it's really clear, but this is what can happen just after a few days if you've got the light in there and not a heavy stocking of plants. I actually already have shrimp in this tank, and this tank obviously has no substrate or whatever, and that's full of zebra danios, and how green the water went. This tank was just as bad as the rest of them, but I use these. So this is a UV sterilizer. This one is designed for a sump, but this one is a powerhead UV sterilizer, and that one is perfect for your aquarium, especially if you don't want to have a sump filtration set up, because that is just going to make sure the water is absolutely crystal clear. So I set the UV sterilizer up in this tank when it was green, and you can see just how much growth I've got from the plants, as well as how clear the water is from being that pea soup color. So this is Alternanthera renickii Red Mini. I've got a few stems that don't look very good at the moment. Actually, a lot of them are actually sick, but I'll show you the power of a dirted aquarium. This is Ledwigia, I can't pronounce the name, and there's 3 stems of that, and then again another red Rotala species, and I've just planted them all into this aquarium, and you can see the Alternanthera renickii Red Mini look quite sick there at the back, but you'll see what happens to them in a few days. So this Glossostigma was only a few strands. I planted it in there and it started growing like absolute crazy. So I just set up the UV sterilizer powerhead filter. I just bought this off eBay. It was less than $40 and it's worth its weight in gold. So there's some shrimp in this tank, and you can see how green the water is. After one day, this aquarium did go a bit cloudy. That's with all the red plants. I did put some Apongigetans in the front there because they were looking a bit sick in one of my other aquariums, and putting them into a dirted aquarium is just a good way to recover sick plants. So even if you set your dirted aquarium up as a hospital tank for your plants, is well worth it. This aquarium's still pretty clear. This is day 2. You can see the water's a little bit clearer now, but it's still quite cloudy and green. Obviously, because there's pebbles in this aquarium, there is a bit of tannins that have leached out into the water, so it's going to have that little bit of a tea color. This is day 3. You can see how much clearer it is, and this tank actually settled with all the plants, so it's less cloudy now. And day 4, how clear that tank is just with the UV sterilizer powerhead filter, and you can see the shrimp absolutely love it. So that's dwarf blixer that's in that aquarium. The root systems on them have only just established now. So after a few days, the water has started to go green in this tank, but you can see that the Apongigetans at the front have recovered quite well and got a lot of new growth on them. The Ledwigia glandirosa, I believe it's called, is starting to throw out a heap of new growth. They're not as red as when they first went in there, and neither is the Rotala at the back, but that's got to do a lot with this buildup of algae over the top of the water. So the Alternantheria renickii red mini at the back there did recover quite well, even though you can't really see it at the moment. All I've got to do to get this water clear is just move this UV sterilizer from this tank. I added some fish to this tank and that kind of upset the balance of the tank, so it went green again. So putting the UV sterilizer in here for a few days, it'll clear up without any issues. But you can see obviously the glossostigma is growing really well, the dwarf blitz is growing really well, and at the back there all the pearlweed is absolutely going crazy. The best thing about a dirted aquarium, once you've got everything sorted out, like because I'm trying to be cheeky and not have filtration in these tanks, it is being harder than if you were to just have a filter in the tank, and that's mainly because the limitations of power points in here, and like I'm running everything really safely in my aquarium, so I thought maybe it's better to just have some filterless aquariums. The shrimp in like this dirted aquarium here are actually doing really well. I just chucked in some assorted ones and they're breeding like crazy. I won't probably be able to find any babies now that I've said that, but there are absolutely massive amounts of shrimp fry in here, and I attribute that to this being a dirted aquarium, because I have got shrimp in all my other aquariums. Even if I had no fish in there and made sure there was no planaria, I don't get them breeding as much as if they were in a dirted aquarium like this. If you're wondering if there's any plants that aren't suited for a dirted aquarium, probably if there are any, it would be saucer tank and some of the mosses. Apart from that, everything will benefit from a dirted aquarium, even stuff like bulbitis. This plant is bulbitis. You can see it's a rhizome plant and it adheres to the decor or rocks or driftwood. So if you have it on any of your decor, you just put it kind of closer to the substrate level like that. So a rock like that would be perfect with a small bit of bulbitis. It'll grow down onto there and then send its roots straight down into the soil, and then it will grow absolutely crazy. That's originally how I got these ones to grow so well, was I had them in dirted aquariums. This bit of algae, I thought the rosy barbs might clean that up for me, but this particular type of algae, I think I need the Siamese algae eaters to eat. So if you don't know, different fish eat different types of algae. Rosy barbs are really good at eating the staghorn algae, which I did have covering all of my bulbitis, and they've taken care of that, which was great. But this one here was actually in amongst a whole bunch of moss, and I need a different type of fish to take care of that. Amazon swords are probably one of the ones that really benefit from dirted aquariums, because obviously, as you can see, they grow extensive root systems, even though I haven't planted these ones yet, and they will really appreciate the extra nutrients to the point where if you have them in a dirted aquarium and you've got a large aquarium, they'll more than likely start sending out runners, which is a good way to propagate them. All the stem plants will do really well in a dirted aquarium as well, such as bacopa here and pearlweed, but more so your bulb plants and your sword plants. So obviously the Amazon swords like that, Ocelot swords will do really well as well. And then if the glares gets off here, this is, I'll go to a different one because sorry, can't see anything there. At the back here, those are crypticorns. If you plant them in a dirted aquarium, you can actually divide up your crypts that come in like a basket pot. There'll be a few different bulbs in there. Divide them up evenly in a dirted aquarium and they will grow really well. That's actually how I propagate all my crypts, that when I do them myself, I'm trying to get more of my own production happening and rely less on the wholesaler. So the only way I know to reliably grow them quickly and fill out a really big area is to grow them in a dirted aquarium. The aquasoil still works well as well, but for whatever reason, a dirted aquarium seems to be that little bit better for doing propagation of crypts. Java fern, of course, and Anubias will benefit as well, but obviously with them being rhizome plants, so you know they've got little rhizomes down there, it's a bit more tricky to plant them. So if you're not confident in your ability to plant them, just leave them in or on their rock or whatever and let them find the dirt themselves with their own root system, same as the bulbitis. because these are Java ferns in here, and I've got them planted in potting mix, and you can see the growth nature of them. They grow a lot thicker when they're in a dirted environment. Obviously these ones are out of water, but the principle is still pretty much the same. To get rid of the tannins out of this water and make it like crystal clear, the UV sterilizer won't do that, but if you get some activated charcoal and you put that in the aquarium, that'd be the way that you get the water to go crystal clear. But I kind of like this look for this aquarium because it does, in my opinion, make the shrimp colors look a little bit nicer, and it makes the green on these dwarf blixer look even nicer. This is my CO2 setup that I haven't actually got replenished, so it's actually an empty CO2 canister. I find a dirted aquarium is better than having CO2. So CO2 puts everything on easy mode, and if you're not confident in your ability to maintain a dirted aquarium, I'd go with the CO2. So CO2 and a good LED light will work really well for your plants, but a dirted aquarium and a good LED light will be the best thing that you can have, because it'll help your red plants, it'll help your green plants, it'll help every single plant that you've got. CO2 will kind of do that as well, but there are things that can go wrong with CO2 as well. So it just depends on what you feel more confident with. I like soil more because I also don't like having to keep replenishing my CO2 bottle, because this one here, which is a decent sized one, will only last me 6 months for 4 aquariums. If you have any questions, just ask in the comments. I think I've covered everything that I need to in this video. If you've liked what you see, please like and subscribe. I will be doing more content with dirted aquariums. I'll do some videos on how to use like pots in your aquarium with dirt, because there are some ways to have some really nice things going on in your tanks, especially if you like to gravel vac or move things around your aquarium and you don't want to upset the balance of everything and have dirt or make a mess of the aquarium. So using pots is a good way around that, and that is a video in on itself on how to do that.